The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
You are comfortably zoned with the Zigzag Man in Alameda, California, pushing on the doors of life marked pull and fighting the unholy trinity as we go. Big business, organized religion, and government.
I'm back with David Hubler, back with Michael Preminger. How are you guys? Ready for some Bronx Roots?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Michael, what's been going on?
Oh boy. I'm laughing. Well, it was my birthday 2 weeks ago. That's right. So
right.
I'm an older guy with a lot of ailments, but I don't think that's what we want to talk. Not a lot. Just
well, we all have them. We're getting old, but
yeah.
This is the kind of thing that keeps our mind off of it for a while.
Right.
Yeah.
I thought I would start the program by asking you both if there's anything you'd like to get out there in any way that would feel cathartic to you. And start with David. And this is politics, baseball, life.
Something that would feel cathartic.
Just by getting it out.
Well, I mentioned earlier that tomorrow is my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. The cathartic feeling would come if I were turning 50. That would be nice. Even 40 would do.
Nice. So, what are you, 43 at this point?
Getting there, yes. I'm approaching 43, but from the other side.
And you think you'll be more distinguished if you make it to 50?
Yeah, I think. I mean, my numerous little ailments and things would probably disappear, would probably be gone, like if you could.
Yes, but if you had a chance to live it all over again, you might get hit by a bus. So.
Oh, don't say it.
No, that's.
No, of course, but we're grateful this is one life that I'm appreciating being older. I'm 71, almost 72, and
oh, you're a youngster.
A kid.
Boy.
You should be in the peanut gallery on this show.
I appear to be, but that's very deceptive.
Yeah, no, it's all what you make.
The only way I'm young is that I haven't grown up.
Yeah, mentally,
in that
right.
case, I'm about 6.
With a mustache, that's really incredible.
6 with a mustache. That sounds like 6 with 6 you get egg roll or something.
Yes, that's right,
6
free egg
with a
roll.
mustache.
Yeah. You know what? One thing is interesting with Mike's birthday and mine. Among our group in the Bronx in the 50s, we were all born within there's so many of us who were born within like a month of each other. I mean, I was on the 3rd. I had a friend who was born on the 4th and another friend who was born on the 5th. One friend was born on August 28th. I mean, it was all like within a boom. You talk about a baby boom. This was, like the local explosion of babies.
It's kind of funny because it was like that in Jackson Heights. For me, my bar mitzvah, I had about 5 or 6 friends who had bar mitzvahs within 2 weeks of each other. So I guess it's.
You think neighbors got together and planned this stuff?
That was my dream. Is that's what it was.
Oh yeah.
But
all right, Martha, let's go upstairs. Wait.
Yeah, I've asked you guys this before, I think. What would the age that if you could go back, what age would you want to be, Michael?
Oh, I had said this. I remember you asking this. 28.
Okay. And I think me, it was around 31 or 32. How about you, David?
Yeah, I would split the difference. I'd say about 30 or so. Yeah, I mean, that was the time we were living in England, and our sons were born, and it was a very nice existence at that time. So, yeah, I would say about that time. And, of course, things were it was still, there was war and things like that going on. But where we lived in this quiet village, it was very pleasant. The work was very interesting. And, that would be a good age. I think at 30 you still have it, like Major League ball players at 30 really haven't started the downhill slope yet. So I think
but it's coming.
Well, it's all coming to all of us, That's the thing. That's what
Well, with it comes knowledge and wisdom too. I don't.
Only if you're Chinese. The Chinese get very smart, and they grow these little wispy beards, and they're very bright and very smart. It doesn't happen to us. We just get old and cranky.
That's very funny. That's very funny.
We're old cranky
little
men.
White beards, don't they?
Yeah,
Well, I think maybe we're cranky because we see the world too clearly, and we also see what could have been, what still could be, I guess. But hopes are fading to keep this thing together.
What thing are you talking about?
I'm basically talking about the world as we know it.
See
that is dependent on checks and balances, depending on a Supreme Court that doesn't want to put something in that says the president can't be investigated for crimes while he's in office, let alone impeached or anything like that.
Well, he can be impeached. There's no law against that. They've done it many times.
We have a Supreme Court nominee, Kavanaugh, who is he said it before. He doesn't want presidents being investigated.
Yeah, to be prosecuted while in office.
Right. Well, he doesn't even want him investigated, let alone prosecuted.
Well, I don't think he has much say in that. It's the separation of powers there. I mean, unless it were to come to the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court can't tell the executive.
If he gets on the Supreme Court, he has power there.
Only if a suit comes before the court. He can't do anything until then. I'm not so worried about it. I think he's going to be terrible. I have no hopes that this man will suddenly turn around and become a suitor, or even what's his name, who just retired, but who could see things on both sides. But I think it's going to be, that's the trouble. That's the trouble. Too many people don't really realize the effects of their vote. Many people do not assume that electing someone like Trump is going to lead to the whole judicial system being swayed to the right. And now all they're thinking about is the bread and butter issues and their guns. And I think Obama was right when he said that. Anyway.
Yeah, and their paycheck. They vote.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's understandable. Nobody wants to lose that. But it's sort of interesting. You see, we've just started talking about aging. And who are the people, the one cohort that has really gone, besides the evangelicals, the one cohort that is really in Trump's corner? And that's people our age. And that's very frightening.
Why is that, you think?
I don't know. I wish I knew.
I didn't see statistics broken down like that before. That's interesting.
But it's true, and you see these people, and so many of them are living on a Social Security pension and have Medicare, and yet the very two things that basically are keeping these people alive in one respect or another are the two primary things that Trump and his allies are trying to destroy. It boggles the mind. I just was reading that a whole bunch of GOP Senate candidates are all scrambling to do away with the pre-existing conditions part of the ACA, the Obamacare.
Of Obamacare, yeah.
And to me, that is so fundamentally wrong.
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
It's bad enough they're tinkering with the whole system to begin with instead of trying to improve it.
The best thing of it. That's the only thing
yes,
you can say that's
exactly.
Working.
Well, it's not the only thing, but it certainly is a critical element. I mean, to let's say to reach our age, which is untold, we will not reveal the correct age, but to suddenly wind up with a condition that may be curable down the road, but because of right now it's okay, but to lose the ability for to have insurance that is not irreversible because you suddenly come down with an illness, and it's just terrible. I mean, it's so antithetical to everything that we believe in, for the most of us believe in.
How about this? You're insured with a company, and they are paying people specifically to deny your claim.
That's right.
That's part of the budget. It's not built into the premiums, but it's part of the budget that an insurance company has. They hire people to deny.
That's right.
Deny, and then sue us. And if you sue us, maybe you're dead by then, and maybe our lawyers will outlast your lawyers.
Well, yeah, plus our lawyers, meaning the people who will be suing, probably have nowhere near the amount of money to go against a fleet of corporate lawyers on the other side. You just couldn't do it. You couldn't possibly afford it. And in addition to which, they would just drag it on out till you died, as you said. You just died before you can even get to court.
Yeah.
It's
or
horrible.
Just deny the whole thing at the beginning and let you have to start all over again in the claims process, which is arduous for. And I'm thinking about people who have lost their homes to these fires.
Sure. Yeah.
To prove that stuff and come up with records and all of that might have been destroyed in the fire, and deal with a bunch of snarky people who are paid for the same reason the other insurance companies pays them, to deny the claims.
Well, suppose right now you have insurance with a company, and under the law you can't be denied coverage because of a pre-existing condition. And let's say you had, something 10, 12 years ago. So they can't do anything about it now. But let's say, for the sake of argument, you lose your job at the company, and with it goes your insurance. Now you get another job, and you apply for their insurance, and because of that pre-existing condition a dozen years or so ago, you can't get the insurance through no fault of your own. You didn't do anything. You paid premiums. The company paid premiums, and now suddenly you're nowhere. You're just totally out of luck. It's a very awful, awful situation, and I have a lot of bones to pick with Republican legislators, but I cannot understand how any one of them could be against health care for everyone. It just boggles my mind.
And it should be single payer, and it should.
Yeah, it probably should be. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it should. But I don't know how we will ever see that happen. I don't know. I mean, the whole idea. Yeah.
Single payer again is what?
Just one organization, like Medicare. Everybody's in Medicare, regardless of their age.
And you don't need a secondary?
Well, you might want a secondary, but everyone is basically covered by, let's say, Medicare or some other name they give it.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Britain,
it becomes a government program, but if the government can afford to have 7 wars going on over oil and religion, then they can afford to take care of the people who,
of course,
what they want is what everybody else has in medical care. Everybody should get the same. If you're really rich or you're really poor, you should be entitled to be cured, have a life expectancy that's
normal.
As good
Yeah,
as
normal
the
life.
next guy.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean,
it
you shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to rely on one of the.
When you
it is. It is unfair. it's
no, I mean it's unfair it would be that way. It'd
of course.
Really fair. It'd be nice. It would be idyllic.
I know just until recently, until this latest Democratic governor came in Virginia, and a couple of Republican state senators finally saw the light and changed their vote. But there were 400,000 people, mostly poor people, in the southwest corner of Virginia who had no health care.
Wow.
Because 400,000 in just this one state. And the state legislature kept refusing to accept the Obamacare program that would set up registers and programs within the state. They said no, because even though the federal government was going to pay 90-something% of the costs, and then reduce it over 10 years to where it was a little more equitable for the federal government and the state. They said, oh no, because what's going to happen is the federal government is going to leave us high and dry. We'll have to foot the whole bill, so we don't even want to go into this thing.
But who puts the whole bill if these people don't have insurance and they go on welfare? Doesn't the state end up footing the bill?
Yeah, I mean, of course, and if they check into a hospital with no insurance, they have to be treated by law. So where does that come from? It comes from the fact that people. There was a case the other day that the woman had a heart attack or something. I forget the result. And she went into the hospital. She recovered, and it took a while. She was in the hospital for a bit, and she felt the bill came to over $120,000, of which her insurance paid $50,000.
Oh,
That left a bill of whatever the difference is for her to pay, and there's no resources to do this. Now, what the hospitals do is they overcharge everyone, just because if they could get that overcharge paid, that helps to defray the cost of the people who can't afford anything. So we're stuck either way. But it's just
$10 for a box of Kleenex, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. Or $7 for an aspirin tablet. You know, they do that, and they do. It's just awful. Just a terrible, terrible system. Yeah.
Speaking of aspirin, something comes out this week, and we've all been trained to take either an aspirin, a baby aspirin, for preventative medicine, basically, to prevent a heart attack or prevent you thin the blood, this, that, and the other thing. This is 25 years they've been doing this. They come out this week and they say it's ineffective, and that the gains are out, or you lose more in the long run because because the chances are you'll bleed more from the aspirin than it'll save you from a heart attack.
Well, I mean, I haven't seen that. I mean, I know that the dosage is supposed to be that 81 milligram. That's low dosage.
Right. Well, it just absolutely shocked me that, I mean, I saw it all over CNN. I'll send you a link if I could find one.
That's all right. I mean, I frankly do take one. I take a.
Do you?
Right.
Yeah,
No?
yeah. And I asked my doctor about it, and he said, "Sure, you go ahead." You know. Now, of course, that may be for these latest. But you know, these studies come and go. Now suddenly, coffee is healthy.
No, I was going to say, now coffee is good for you.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and then 10 years ago, you can't drink coffee; that'll kill you. You know, now coffee is the great.
Now the positive effects of shooting heroin in your eye are absolutely astronomical.
Who would have that? I understand. That can be.
Yeah, I knew you would.
Yeah, that's a hard one. But the what was it? Oh, Coca-Cola. No, Pepsi-Cola. It was Pepsi-Cola just purchased for several $1 billion this European coffee company, sort of like the Starbucks of Europe. And they bought it specifically for the idea of getting into that area of drinks because they're all getting away from the sweetened, sugar sweetened.
Mm-hmm.
So they need another outlet to keep their revenue stream going. So they bought this thing. They're not going to compete in the States with Starbucks per se, but they're going to figure out other programs. They're not going to open up one of these like supposedly they're all over Europe now, like the Starbucks are. But all of a sudden, coffee is now drink 2 or 3 cups a day, you'll feel fine. Right? It's just crazy stuff.
And now they're saying it doesn't increase blood pressure or whatever. But when I drink a lot of coffee, and I will either drink no coffee or too much coffee, that's how I go. And when I'm drinking a lot of coffee, it makes me feel racy. And
yeah, that's why I stopped. I was.
Oh, really?
Flutters.
Oh, that's interesting.
But I was drinking a lot.
Oh. And now they have this thing, this cold press coffee. We have one in the office. There's a company nearby. So they've set up one in our office, sort of goodwill kind of thing. And it's cold coffee. Comes right out of almost like a beer tap. And it comes in a keg. And they replace the keg periodically. And it's supposedly much stronger than caffeine. The caffeine amount is much stronger than normal coffee. But it's
you
very
can go into Starbucks and get a hit or two of what do they call it? Boy, I can't think of that.
Joy juice?
No,
I don't know. I don't go to Starbucks.
A hit or two in your coffee. Boy, it's coffee concentrated.
Oh, wow.
Real concentrate of coffee or not cappuccino. I'll think of it later. I'm off.
I don't know because all of those names confuse me. I don't go into Starbucks very often, and you can't just order. I'd like a cup of coffee, please. They say, well,
Oh, they laugh at you.
They do. They laugh at you. What you want coffee, right? Sure. What kind of coffee would you like? A cappuccino, frappa, mocha, or all this. And then we're going to put your name on the cup so that you remember that it's yours, because this stuff is going to knock you for a loop.
And people don't remember that coffee is very dehydrating. So
yeah, it's a diuretic. Yeah, I mean, it tastes like a goat when you drink a couple of cups of coffee.
So, what else is going on that you guys want to talk about, and how are we going to solve any of these problems, or anything stand out to you? What's cathartic to you, Michael?
My grandson's fall baseball season starting next week.
Oh.
Cool.
That's always fun. Yeah.
Does he?
I was going to say,
play?
Excuse me.
What position does he play?
Well, he's only 5, so.
Okay, so more like a T-ball thing.
Yeah, but this starting next week, he's moving on up to coach pitch, they call it.
What is that?
Coach pitches.
Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha.
Instead of just sitting off the tee.
Yeah. Oh,
they still have the kids move around to every position. Each inning, no kid plays just one position.
Oh, that's interesting too.
Yeah, that way every kid feels that he's has a chance to get the ball or something. And I just that's starting next Sunday, so it depends on what time his game is. And I may miss some of our get-togethers.
No, let us know what the time is. Yeah,
let us know. We could adjust the time.
Yeah.
Later in the day, or Saturday, or we're flexible.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
So that's one of the things about Little League baseball and stuff. They do, for the most part, try to get all the kids involved. That's why I don't think these Pop Warner Football League things are so good. They give the kids all this equipment, and and still, there's only about 3 players on each team that actually do something with the ball. The rest of these kids just hit each other in the line. And the fattest kids are the big stars on the line because you can't move them. But just like a quarterback, and then there's a guy who runs with the ball. So
you're right. I never thought of that. That's true. And the other kids, I even when you think about that, and you watch college ball or certainly the pros, and you see some of these linemen who are, 350, 360.
Yes.
Were they like force-fed when they were children? How do you get to that? And how do you say, well, because it's one thing I want to be a football player and throw the winning touchdown. It's another, well, I want to weigh 500 pounds and hurt the other guy. You go, what? That's your goal?
I know. I always like
make the team.
Yeah.
I've read about. Then you're a 360-pound high school sophomore walking around looking like a whale. And,
right.
And it's over. That's it.
Yes. Like my son Jeffrey says, don't these people have mirrors in their house? Can't they see what they look like? God, I know.
Yeah, we see them in the uniforms. Imagine, without the uniforms.
Oh, yeah. God.
Not a nice picture.
No. And then they adorn themselves with tattoos, which makes it even a prettier picture.
Oh, yeah.
I guess they figured they got so much.
Notice them.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Hey, look at that. Who that guy there? He's got a tattoo. Oh, you mean the whale?
I see that with these.
Speaking of style,
girls
have you seen
who are
beards on ball players today? He used to be one guy, a relief pitcher with the Giants, went to the Dodgers. Can't think of his name. Now you got 40 guys with these big old beards that.
Oh yeah, they all have beards. Yeah. You're right. They all do.
Yeah, it's the House of David syndrome, I think.
Right. But they were a little
to be mainly relief pitchers. I don't know why. Well, because they're sitting in the bullpens and they don't have a lot to do. So hey, let's grow a beard.
Yeah, that's how it started. I wouldn't be surprised.
But you're right. Yeah. It's a lot of beards. House of David. That's
the House of David, right? Yeah, a lot of people thought that was a Jewish thing, but it wasn't.
It wasn't?
No.
Really?
No. They just looked like Jews because they had all those beards.
No.
Really?
Yeah. I forget. They were like a Mennonite or some other religious sect.
Oh.
Yeah, I found that out years later. I always rooted for them. I didn't know.
Yeah, right. Until this second, I didn't know.
Yeah,
Boy, I rooted for them. They played the House of Goyim that time.
Yeah, right. They tried to
it was extra
draft
innings. It was.
I'm going to take my House of David poster down now.
They did try to draft Hank Greenberg one year, I understand.
Did they really? I would think so.
Yeah, that was a big disappointment to me too. I must admit. You always had a fondness for them since there were so few Jewish ball players in the major leagues. You figured, well, the House of David has got them all, so we'll root for them.
Yeah,
right.
That really surprises me.
Yeah, I'm sorry to bust your.
The more you learn, the better.
Yeah.
But in a way, I think those were Jewish guys that got together after Shabbos.
Right, they didn't play from Friday night. No, actually, I think they didn't play they didn't play some days. They played other days. I don't know when their schedule was. That was the reason most people never got to see them play, because you didn't know when they were going to play. They would show up in town and play.
Wasn't the House of Sophie Jewish, the all-girls team?
Yes, they were.
That's what I thought. That would have really upset me if that was not true.
I know. Oh. Yeah.
Now, what team was this? I don't remember the House of Sophie.
They just played in one corner of the Bronx.
Right, Harris Field.
They played. They started out in a hopscotch league.
Esther was at shortstop, and
they were all named Esther, if you remember. That's why. That's where Abbott and Costello got their routine. Yeah, got their routine from, because Esther so and so's on first, Esther so and so's on short. You had to really write out their last names, and so many of them were Markowitz. That was another problem.
And Shapiro, don't forget Shapiro.
Coach would throw to Esther, and the outfielder would go nuts. That's very funny.
When Pop fly, you'd have to say, Esther has it. Which Esther? What Esther?
Yeah, I got it. Who are you?
Who are you? Yeah, right.
Who are you to have it? Why can't I have it? I'm not good enough?
He called Esther. I'm here.
I didn't pay my dues this week. I got it. Go away from me. What are you talking about?
It's mine, and you're not getting it.
You're not getting it. That's right.
You're not getting it.
So long before I let you have this, Papa.
Yeah, I'm well rehearsed, and you're not getting it. It comes natural. So, all right, guys, this is fun. I appreciate your company. How about that?
Same here.
Yeah,
I will
me too.
let you know as soon as I can what time the game is. Right now, my computer
we'll do it anytime over the weekend.
Is broken.
It's good for all three of us.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Okay. Be well, gentlemen. We'll see you next week. And if you're listening to this, stay tuned. Right after this segment, we're going to have Tony D'Angelo, who has a special guest on Tony D'Angelo AM PM.
Her name wouldn't be Esther, would it?
No.
No.
That's a great one. That's a great one.
Okay, guys, take care.
Well,
bye.
Okay, bye. See you next week. Thanks for listening. Tony's next, and be well, everybody. Bye. I am back, comfortably zoned from Nedick's at the Old Garden on 49th Street. Hal Bock is the host of the show, of the segment, and George Case III is here. So just the three of us. David Hubler may or may not join us, but I'm not going to waste any time, and I'm going to ask Hal, something I love doing. What's the score, Hal?
Well, guys, the score tonight is a familiar one for me, and it's looking at baseball and what I consider to be problems for the game. The column I wrote this week discussed the suicide squeeze. Suicide squeeze play I haven't seen in a baseball game in many, many years, but it was posted by the great John Thorne, who's baseball's official historian. He had a tape from a game that was played in Japan. Looked like maybe minor leaguers, maybe high school players. I'm not sure which. But they executed a suicide squeeze to win the game. And that's unheard of in Major League Baseball these days. You don't see the suicide squeeze. You don't see the sacrifice. You don't see stolen bases. You don't see a lot of what I grew up with and what helped me fall in love with this wonderful sport called baseball. And I started to do a little research, and the numbers are astounding. At the All-Star break, strikeouts were at an all-time high. Batting average for teams was at a 46-year low. In 1990, teams averaged 9 hits and 5 strikeouts. Today, it's 8 hits and 8 strikeouts. So it's become the graph has come together. It's not encouraging. It's the lowest collective batting average for Major League teams since 1972. That's the year before they went to the designated hitter. So I got to believe that baseball is concerned about these numbers, and what they're going to do about it, that I can't say. Much of it is a result of the game's romance with analytics and sabermetrics and all of this stuff that they've
home runs
on the game.
Obsession with
launch angles and spin angles and all of this stuff that they've just brought into the game, which I don't think the game ever really needed. I thought it was a great game when I fell in love with it, and it can be a great game again if they just go back to old school baseball. So I'm curious about what George thinks about that and what you think about it, Ralph.
Well, first of all, let me jump in here a second, because Hal mentioned last week. He said, "George, you're going to be interested in my column for next week," and absolutely, you hit it right on the head, Hal. And I am completely disgusted with the lack of fundamentals and the craziness of sabermetrics. Even though I had been involved with Saber, the overabundance of statistical analysis to me is just crazy. Just play the game the way it's supposed to be played. Forget about launch angles. Forget about velocities. Forget about all this stuff. Go up there, hit the ball. If the runner needs to be advanced, advance him. Learn how to bunt. Learn how to base run. Learn how to throw to the right base. Keep your head in the game. And it seems to me that, as Hal has pointed out, the fundamentals are lacking so much. And I think the numbers, your numbers, Hal, quite interesting to me, because I don't follow those numbers. I don't know what those numbers specifically are, but the strikeouts to hits ratio, really tells you something, because the batters are up there, they're swinging, and the strikeout has become commonplace. It used to be, hey, if you got up there and struck out, you were very unhappy with yourself, and fans were booing you and all that kind of stuff. Today, it's almost like a badge of honor. Either you hit one out or you strike out, and I don't like it.
It's boring baseball to me.
It is to me, too. Hal.
What, me?
I said it is to me, too. It's very boring.
And the attendance is down. So that has to annoy the owners. That has to get the owners' attention, because that's money
considerably down in all but 2 cities. I think the Dodgers and one other team is not down. Everybody else is. So what you're saying really runs true. It gives all this new baseball stuff isn't going over with the fans. The way I see it.
Well, I think they're trying to cater to the new fans, people who don't understand baseball. They go and they're sitting in the luxury boxes, or they're spending time on their cell phones or doing whatever they're doing, and somebody jacks one out and everybody gets all excited. But, if that person had knew baseball and understood, if they had a base runner on and they had to manufacture a run, move that runner over and do something. Learn how to bunt. Do something. But today's fans, the young fans in particular, I don't think the older fans, but baseball is trying to cater to the young fans and the girls and everybody that goes to the game, the women and the guys. They think the guys are superstars because they hit one out. Well, I don't agree with that. That's not the way baseball used to be played.
Well,
when I first started covering
baseball, the suicide squeeze, and last night the Mets playing the Dodgers. Late in the game, they've got first and third and one out. Perfect time for a suicide squeeze, because if you're caught, the runner on first moves up into scoring position, and if you're not, game over. Turns out they ended up scoring, but I thought about that right then. Bunt the guy in, for crying out loud. Infield was back. They weren't expecting it. Would have been a great time.
Well, that's the thing, Ralph. I agree with you, and Hal would agree too, I believe. I mean, if you're, but probably the hitter, whoever it was, and I didn't see the game, didn't know how to bunt. So you call a suicide squeeze. The runner's breaking from third. That batter has to put the ball down, and if he knows how to bunt. Right. If he knows how to bunt, fine. If he doesn't know how to bunt, then it is a suicide because the base runner's out.
When I later in the inning, I think Nemo did bunt and got it down and got a guy over. But you're right. You rarely see, and the bunt was not a suicide.
Well, no, it would be a safety, what they call a safety squeeze. Then there's there's a difference. I mean, if the runner's breaking and the batter has to get the ball down, that's a suicide. If the runner's breaking, but you're trying to bunt, but he's going to hold up because he's not trying to score, then that's a safety squeeze.
Yeah.
When I first started covering baseball 100 years ago,
exciting plays, Jackie Robinson coming down that third baseline, Bacon and what have you. The game has changed. We've lost that. We've lost the get the guy over, get the guy into scoring position.
Exactly. When I first started covering baseball, 100 years ago, whatever it was, I went to spring training. And the great Paul Richards was manager of the Orioles at that time, and I was in the Baltimore training camp. And they had a drill, and they called it get him over, get him in. And the idea was to advance the runner. Give yourself up to advance the runner. Right. Move, if the guy's on second base, hit the ball to the right side so he can get over to third. And that you don't see that now. You don't see guys sacrificing themselves for the good of the rally or the good of the team. Everybody's swinging for the seat.
And I can almost tell you why. I know it's a rhetorical question for you, Hal, and I know, George, you realize it, that you can't take that sort of stuff to the arbitration table to make bucks.
That's right.
And that's all the game is based on, is how many bucks can the player take away, and how can he maximize what he does? So they go for the home run. And if they're not penalizing, if they're not paying you less because you strike out, what the hell? You're going to take away from my worth. If I ground to second and get the guy over from second to third, it literally takes away from my bargaining ability because my
batting average goes down.
Right. So because the game is so much based on money, if they could find a way to change the tail that's wagging the dog, that modify that, and I think things will take care of itself. I think giving appreciation to the guy who can hit and run. My God, what they say about Nellie Fox all those years. Aparicio comes up, Fox gets him over, Landis comes up. They didn't have much, but they could manufacture a run. The Dodgers, Willie Davis and Wills and Gilliam, and getting guys over and get them in. Great expression, Hal.
Yeah. And it was a way of the way the game was played, and the way it's no longer played. Now, when that's
called small ball versus long ball, and the game is long ball today. When the earlier era, small ball, you play. First of all, the money was not as obscene as it is today. So players were, they were having to work in the off season, and they were happy to make a few bucks with endorsements and that kind of thing. Today it's a different world. When you've got a rookie whose minimum salary is $550,000, when in an earlier era, Joe DiMaggio was making $100,000, and everybody was screaming, "How much money can somebody make?" Well, now you're making 5 times that, and the guy hasn't played one inning.
Well, it's the guy that I'm not begrudging. It's the system that I'm begrudging.
Well, no, I agree. The system is broken.
The guy that signs a contract for X number of dollars. It's like Barbra Streisand. Worth what you get. If they want to pay me, pay me. It's not. It's the system's fault, not the individual player. So, just to make that clear that
Ralph, I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely. I remember I would tell people, I'd say, hey, if I were playing today and some crazy general manager was going to offer me a 10-year contract for $2 million a year guaranteed and all that, I'd say, hey, where do I sign? That to me, it is really broken when the kind of money that's being spent. And now you do have the tail wagging the dog because everything is money. The television networks, MLB depends upon the networks. And, they probably are concerned about fan attendance, but on the other hand, they've got all these revenue streams coming in anyhow. They got the luxury boxes, and they got the TV contracts, and they got all the merchandising that goes on. So, these owners, believe me, they're not hurting for money. And Major League Baseball is not hurting for money.
No,
baseball
but
is
I
always
heard
looking to
something
fine-tune the game.
Contracts are going to either go down or be limited in some way. Have you guys heard anything about that?
No.
I haven't. Maybe Hal has. I really don't know. I would like to say that something's going to happen, but I have my doubts.
Yeah.
The game, they were always trying to fine-tune the game. And I have to laugh at it. They decided that the pace of the game was too slow for the millennials and the younger generation. So they decided, well, we got to make the game faster. And what did they come up with? They came up with a replay rule. And you could protest a call, and the umpires could go and put headsets on. And everybody's standing around while they decide whether the call is correct or not. And that's 2 or 3 minutes that they're adding into the game instead of deducting it from the game. So they just, I don't know, they just don't seem to have an idea of how to go about things.
You're right, Hal, and I just want to add, though, that there's an inordinate amount of overturned calls by the umpires these days, 40, 50%, something like that. I was always led to believe that the ump's going to get it right 98% of the time. But truth be known, technology has brought out some things about either incompetence or just the inability. It goes so fast that the human eye can't catch it correctly. So
the umpire is the human element. He's a human being. The pitcher doesn't plan on throwing a gopher ball, but sometimes he does.
Right.
He makes a mistake. Sometimes umpires make mistakes, but that's the game. You live with it. I can't understand why we have to delay the game 2, 3, 4 minutes while we decide whether a call was right or not. The call was the call. Let's move on. That's just
Have they made any headway in getting the results of that call from New York, where they have their central umpiring headquarters or whatever? Have they shortened the time at all from year to year?
No. Maybe one of the things they could do, if they wanted, is have a fifth umpire in the press box and let him decide from the press box what he saw and then go from there. But they have to call New York, and then the New York umpires have to huddle, and then they relay their decision to the umpires on the field, and it just goes on. To me, it goes on forever. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but
well, Hal, let me ask you something about that. And now, have they followed the lead of the NFL? I mean, the NFL does a very similar thing, and this has been going on now for a couple of years. So I don't know whether Major League Baseball has followed that pattern or followed that way it's done. But I think football does the same thing. The umpires look in the screen and it goes up to wherever it goes up into the atmosphere, and it goes over to New York, and some umpire is sitting there, or some referee is sitting there and making the call, and then it's relayed back. And you got the same thing in football. You got 2, 3, 4 minutes where they're trying to decide on some kind of ruling on what was decided on the field. Well, my opinion is that the same thing is happening in baseball. Now, there is an appeal, I guess, in football. The coach gets, or the team gets penalized or not penalized if the call is upheld. Is there something similar in baseball? I really don't know.
I think you just lose you lose that appeal. You can't appeal again if you lose an appeal. I think if you win an appeal, you have another one. I think. Okay. I mean, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. That's why I'm asking. I really don't know.
Okay. What would you guys say is a rule that isn't in there that should be in there? What is something going on that should be legislated or, talked about? Because there are a number of rules and it's hard to enforce them all, but is there any that should be in there?
Well, they have a rule about how many times you can step out of the box and how many times the pitcher can walk around the mound, but nobody enforces it.
Right.
Now they've added a rule about how many visits you can make to the mound. Well, then you got to be very careful because games can go into extra innings, and if you use up your visits and suddenly your pitcher is in a jam, he's on his own out there, So I don't know if that's a good rule. I don't know if that's going to speed up the game. I mean, the game is the game. George said it before. Play the game. It was good for 150 years. Leave it alone.
Yep.
I have a question for you guys, both in the NFL and in MLB. Is that decision time that the umpires go through, is that advertising time? Are these TV stations getting, while they're deciding, we'll be back with an AMCO commercial or whatever?
Sometimes it is. I've seen that happen.
I'm sure it is. Although I don't think TV is calling it, but I know in football I've seen it. Where you have the guy on the sidelines. I mean, he signals to the umpire or the referee. We're now going to get a timeout, and that timeout is for a commercial. But that's in the course of the game. I don't think in baseball, they do it now. Obviously, if there is a delay and they're waiting 2, 3, 4 minutes, I mean, that's advertising time, so they probably have some kind of contingency advertising plan. Say, hey, if there's a delay, we're going to, this XYZ commercial is going to run during that time.
You know what I think we're moving toward? With all of the technology and all of the analytics, I think you're going to have balls and strikes called automatically, because every game that I watch, they put a little box up at the catcher's position, and you can watch the pitch, and you can see if it's a strike or a ball, regardless of what the umpire calls it. And I just believe that with the trend that they're moving in, the direction they're moving in, you're going to have you're going to have technology calling balls and strikes before too very long.
Now, is that bad or good?
No, that's bad. That's bad.
Okay.
I know everybody wants the call to be correct, and so do I. Listen, I'm all for it. But I also recognize that this is a game played by human beings, and you can't take the human element out of the game. Otherwise, you're going to have robot baseball.
Certain things, like the umpire wouldn't be eliminated. It would just be he'd be back there making sure that the batter doesn't step out or, isn't out of the box and there's no balks or anything. But for the all-important ball and strike thing, even given that umpires have been accused of having their own strike zones, and that's okay if they're consistent, but some of them aren't, from inning to inning, from game to game, that sort of thing. I don't see the ball and strike. Managers can't contest ball and strikes as it is. So that how does it hurt to have that facet of the game called electronically?
I don't want it called electronically. I don't want electronics in baseball. I want human beings playing this game. It was played that way for 150 years, and it was a great, great sport. I don't want technology to take over my game. Otherwise, I can play electric baseball on my tabletop. I mean, what's the point of that? I don't want that. I want human beings playing and officiating these games. That's what I think I want.
Yeah, I happen to agree with Hal too, Ralph, because I'm an old timer. I mean, I grew up in baseball, and I mean, the home plate umpire was always making balls and strike calls. I mean, hey, you could bitch and moan and all that kind of stuff. Again, that's part of the game. But I agree with Hal. He's part of the game. You take that human element out, and that bothers me as far as technology. Maybe we're old school, and maybe that's going to happen someday, but I personally like having the umpire behind there, and he's going to make calls. He's going to make good calls. He's going to make bad calls. Umpires are human beings, and that's the part of it that I think baseball is losing if they go all into this technology and all the sabermetrics that you're involved. You're really taking the human element out of the game, and I think baseball is going to be hurt as a result.
We had a wonderful episode here in Yankee Stadium the other day. The home plate umpire was not exactly consistent, and the Yankees were getting on him pretty good. And finally, Aaron Boone came out, the manager of the Yankees, and he confronted the umpire. He touched the brim of his hat touched the umpire's brim. That's contact. That's an automatic suspension for Boone, and he was suspended for a game. But he was going to get his money's worth. So he went behind home plate and he crouched down like a catcher, and he said, "Now here, this is a strike," right behind home plate. And then he moved himself outside and he said, "Now here, this is a ball." And it was, comical, very entertaining for the fans. And you wouldn't have that if you had technology calling balls and strikes, would you?
Right. And I've seen some of those other times, Hal and Ralph, you've seen it where, the manager gets so incensed over a call, he'll pick up the base, he'll throw it, Billy Martin used to kick dirt all over the umpires and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's the enjoyment for me as a baseball person of watching the game being played by human beings.
I'll tell you, if you want to see something entertaining, there is Bill Haller, Timmy Haller's uncle, and the late Tom Haller's brother is umpiring, and this is on YouTube. And there's an argument with Earl Weaver, who's about
classic.
5'6".
It's a classic.
It's a classic. He's towering over him, and he's just standing there watching
with his arms folded.
Earl Weaver go through the tirades, and he's just the ultimate class, not getting into it, not arguing with him, just watching him. It's classic to watch. So I see exactly what you're talking about. And some of the Billy Martin ones were historic.
Lou Pinello.
Well, I mean, that's been part of baseball. I don't think fans go to a game, just like they don't go to a hockey game or whatever, but, to see the fights, but the fights happen and then they're entertaining. Same thing in baseball. I mean, hey, if you have an argument, you have a guy going crazy or, I don't personally like the baseball brawls. I think they're ridiculous. And the way it's been today, all of a sudden you throw at a guy, you might hit him. All of a sudden you got a fight where in the old days, a pitcher throws at a batter. The batter thinks he's going to go down because the hitter before, hit one out or whatever. That's the way the game was played. But today.
And your dad was an American League player, right?
Right.
Your dad played for the Senators in the American League. He played for the Indians, right?
Right.
Okay. The American League has a designated hitter. The pitcher never comes to the plate. So the pitcher can throw at batters indiscriminately and never have to pay the price. There's a problem. For me, there's a problem with that.
I agree, Hal. I agree. I mean, the older ball players, they knew, and sure, in the National League, they know. Hey, if you're playing and that pitcher, he's going to protect his job, and the hitter knows that if that pitcher was being either shown up or something was happening, and he's going to go down, because they're not trying to intentionally hit him, but they're going to move him off the plate. That's what throwing inside. That's what it does.
Players take care of themselves, take care of the game,
Right.
That's how they take care of the game. They don't need rules, they don't need technology. They take care of the game. But the game is being taken out of their hands.
You remember Matz's first game, the pitcher on the Mets, his first game in
he had a couple of hits.
Got a couple of hits. Right. Isn't that interesting? Who you going to remember in the American League, a pitcher who, you know what I'm saying?
We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Check out how many home runs Warren Spahn had in his career, how many home runs Don Newcomb had.
Right.
And we
Bob
talked
Turley
about Tony Cloninger hit 2 Grand Slam homers in one game. So, I mean, anything can happen. That's the beauty of this game. It's unpredictable. Right. You just don't know.
And how about this? Bob Lemon, the great pitcher for the Cleveland Indians, was the starting center fielder in 1948 for the Indians.
That's right.
So
Ralph, he was the starting center fielder. He was the starting center fielder in 1946. I mean, I have the photos of it. My dad was in left, Lemon was in center, and Hank Edwards was in right. That's where Bob Lemon was, and then Lou Boudreau was convinced that he should put Lemon into the starting rotation, so he really made him into a starting pitcher because he had such a great arm. But Lemon struggled at the plate. Well, as a pitcher, he really helped himself. Bob Lemon was a pretty good hitting pitcher, and guys who were
for you guys one thing: if Babe Ruth were playing in the American League today with the Boston Red Sox, he never would have gotten the opportunity to bat, and probably never would have been a regular, everyday ball player if they had the DH back then, not if you were playing today.
Well, I hope that someday that I don't like the DH. I never liked it, but hopefully someday both leagues are going to have the DH, or both leagues are not going to have the DH. I think the likelihood is that they're both going to have it. I just do not like the DH in one league and not the DH in the other league, because I think it's a totally different strategy that's used when you can depend on that guy sitting on the bench and come up every 4 times and maybe hit and help the team. Where on the other hand, baseball was played with pitchers, and when they got up to bat, if they were a good hitter, that's fine. If they weren't a good hitter, then their job was to advance the runner and going to help their own cause.
Last night, Jacob deGrom, who's trying to win the Cy Young Award with the hitless Mets, he was losing the game 1-0. He had 2 hits. He only gave up 2 hits. He had 2 hits, and his second hit drove in the tying run for the Mets. So he's not a bad hitter,
Right.
No, he's not.
And this goes on
you're
throughout
a Mets fan.
baseball.
Let's talk Mets for a second. Top to bottom, the top 5 with Vargas coming around. We got a pretty damn good top 5. I'm glad they kept it together after the before the trading deadline. It bodes well for next year.
They will keep you in games. The problem is if you have to go to the bullpen, then you could get in trouble.
That's true, but the bullpen lately, with a few games notwithstanding for the Mets, has been much better. And the new double play combination, Hal, of Rosario and McNeil is, at least in the field, and at bat too, they're very impressive.
But they can't figure out who to play at first base.
True.
They're trying to make Jay Bruce a first baseman now.
Maybe not a bad idea. You got Lagares coming back. You got next year. You got Nemo. You got Conforto. Neither of whom seem to win the job entirely. And we don't know when Cespedes is going to come back.
They've had a lot of luck with this guy that they picked up, center fielder from the Tigers.
Jackson.
Right, Austin Jackson. He's played very well for them.
I think they got him from the Giants, but he was a
Oh, that's
Tiger
right. Yeah, I
before.
think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right, yeah.
So they look 100% better. That 1 month that they had, the worst month in their history, I think it was June, really screwed the season. If they were 15-15, you could say good things about the season. But it's horrible as a Met fan. Overall, 2018. Okay, let me ask you guys. Start with George. Your father notwithstanding, have you ever been awed by the presence of someone you were introduced to, either by your dad or somebody in baseball, just absolutely awed?
Well, Ralph, I can't say that I was awed, simply because I used to think of my dad's friends, ball players, whatever, as family. I mean, I knew him so well in a lot of instances. I'd say that probably I'd mentioned this before, when I met Ted Williams, one time when I was an adult, and, he said, hey, how's your old man? I haven't seen you since you were a little kid. That was pretty interesting.
All right. That
for me personally. And the
that,
other one that I really... What's that?
Fun to follow.
Yeah. But the thing is, I think probably the most prominent athlete that I ever met, and really because of his reputation, and what he was Jesse Owens. The fact that my dad actually raced Jesse Owens, and Jesse Owens sat down and talked to me about the race, 15 years later, and remembered my dad and Jesse. I mean, to me, that was an athlete because he was known as the world's fastest human, and for me, as a young college kid, to be able to sit and talk with Jesse Owens, that was pretty good for me.
And what Jesse Owens did in the Olympics for this country, morale.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it was legendary what he did, and it was just sort of a sad indictment of the times. But Jesse was forced, to make ends meet by doing races and doing all kinds of promotional stuff. I mean, he did things when I met him, he was doing a tour of college campuses talking about the Olympics. I mean, that's how he generated some income for himself.
Wow. How about you, Mr. Bock? Anyone that you did a story on or going to interview where you were just standing there and going, man, I'm talking to blank, blank, blank?
I would say there were two of them. I had a one-on-one opportunity with Joe DiMaggio, which was pretty cool.
Yes.
And I was told when I was going in, just don't talk about Maryland. And I didn't. But that was pretty cool. And the other one that I had a one-on-one opportunity with Muhammad Ali. And Ali had already shown the wear and tear, and the Parkinson's was having an effect on him, and he was unable to really communicate. He could nod his head and that sort of thing. So I was careful to ask questions that did not require him to answer in full sentences or anything like that.
And
he was
that
doing a book
has to
tour.
be a skill, Hal, to be able to word it.
You develop these things after 40 years in the business.
Right.
He was doing a book tour, and I'm not a collector of autographs. I collected autographs for my son and for my grandson, but for me, it's just not something I did. But I thought to myself, this is an opportunity with Muhammad Ali. You can't pass this up. So we were in a car, and we drove down to a bookstore down on Wall Street, and the street was jammed with people waiting for Ali. And I just said, wait a minute, before we get out of this car, I want you to autograph this book for me. And he shook his head, and he wrote in the book, and I have it here in my home, he wrote, to Hal, my pal, Muhammad Ali. And I wasn't his pal, but he just...
No, but he was a poet, and he knew it.
He knew it. You're right. Right. And he was... I was really touched by that. So those are the two that have come to mind immediately. There were others. I mean, Willie Mays, who I thought was the greatest player I ever saw, and that's only because I didn't see your dad, George.
I'd say Willie was pretty good. You know, how you picked a good one there. Absolutely.
He was pretty darn good.
Well,
Ted Williams,
he was
one,
darn good. But let me tell you something. Everything I've learned through George and independently since meeting George III about George Jr., he was one damn good ball player.
Oh yeah, he was. But
compared to Richie, they were comparing him to the likes of Richie Ashburn, and I wonder if he didn't get hurt. No one can know for sure, but what do you say to that, George?
Well, I've said it before. I mean, my dad loved the game. I loved the game. You know, he was in the game all his life. You know, the Hall of Fame was something that obviously if you're a ball player you would aspire to, but I don't think my dad was. I think he was realistic. He used to tell me, he said, "Hey, I could have had another 5, 6, 7 good years if I hadn't been hurt, but that was what it was." I mean, he brought it on himself by sliding and developed scar tissue and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that was just the way it was, and back then they couldn't treat it the way they do now. So I don't think he really begrudged not being in the Hall of Fame. I think he was certainly in consideration if he'd have played another 5 or 6 years. But the minimum for a Hall of Fame, except for the special exemptions, was 10 years, and my dad played 11. So I mean, he was on the cusp of maybe having a Hall of Fame career if he'd have played another 7 or 8 years. But as it was, I don't think my dad would be considered.
Damn good ball players.
Well, that's it. I mean, my father was a very good ball player, and I always appreciated the fact, and he was never trying to tell anybody he was the greatest, because he wasn't. There were a lot of great players that he played with, and I was fortunate because I had a chance to see my dad and meet some of those guys, whether it be Ted Williams or Feller or Greenberg or DiMaggio or, Dickey. I mean, they were the great all-time players that my dad played against. So, it's
how about
been a wonderful.
Good ball player, great dad.
Well, yeah, the thing about baseball is that it's such a difficult game. If you can excel, I mean, there are players, and I don't want to beat the drum, but there are players that I think should be in the Hall of Fame, and I keep talking about it, and someday I think he's going to be in there. I mean, that's Gil Hodges. And Gil Hodges has been overlooked for so long, and yet there are players in there. Hey, they've gotten in. But Gil has never gotten in, and I hope someday, he will get in.
There are others. I'll go Minnie Minoso. And who would you pick
That's another
along
one.
those lines, Hal?
Hey, five decade player. He played 5 decades.
100% on those two.
Yep.
Minoso and Gil Hodges, without question.
Who would you add if you had one player, one wish?
Who would I add?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a tough one.
The third.
That's a tough one. Off the top of my head, I couldn't come up with a name for you. But every year, the election generates a lot of controversy. I know when I was a voter, one of the guys I voted for in his first year of eligibility was Carlos Delgado, who played first base for the Mets and for the Florida Marlins for a while, Toronto for a while. And he had terrific numbers. And he did not get 5%, and he was immediately off the ballot. Well, you know, I thought that was kind of strange. Another one who I voted for, who was dropped from the ballot rather quickly, was Andres Galarraga. Those guys were sluggers. I remember saying to myself, my criteria as a voter was, when that guy came to the plate, was I worried for my team, or was I encouraged if he played on my team? Those two really fit the bill. Dave Parker was another one who played right field for the Pirates, had a tremendous arm and a terrific hitter, but he just never got any real support in the Hall of Fame balloting. Why is that?
He went through the drug crisis.
Yeah, that's true. His name was on that list. You're right. There are other players. Don Mattingly here in New York. Keith Hernandez. When those two players, they were both first basemen at the same time here in New York, and it was a great debate. It was kind of like the debate when Willie Mays, Duke Snider, and Mickey Mantle were the three center fielders here in New York.
Right.
And people argued whether Mattingly or Hernandez was the better player. And I thought each of them, had Hall of Fame credentials. Neither of them came close. So it's so hard to say, you know.
Right. Let me clarify something. The drug thing that Parker was accused of and actually went to trial over was not PEDs. It was cocaine. So
Hernandez was in that too. Was in that group too.
Yes. Now I'll ask you for your opinion between Hernandez and Mattingly. Who would you say? They had a great debate. Who would have you chosen?
I was a Mets fan. I would have to stick with Keith. I thought Keith was the better fielding first baseman. I thought hitting-wise, Mattingly probably had a little bit of an edge, but I thought Keith was an artist around first base.
Well, then you'll be happy to learn that Keith is going to work with the upcoming first baseman, Alonso, in spring training next year, and hopefully in the instructional league, because, as you know, he's a color commentator with the Mets right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, they should use a guy like that with that sort of fielding ability to pass it on and keep the tradition of mediocrity going for the Mets. We aspire to mediocrity.
That's our motto.
That's our motto, and we're good at it.
And we're excellent at it.
Yes.
But you got to be excellent at something, don't you?
Yeah, right. I shake my head. It's been a long 50-some-odd years of being a Met fan. But, God, did we love them. We got a National League team back. It was so great after it was like 5 years we didn't have a National League team in New York, and they filled the bill.
When people make fun of the Mets, I say, all their losing ways and some of the bizarre things that go on, I say to them, rooting for them builds character. I hope it does. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't.
Hey, Hal, I used to say that when people kidded me about the Washington Senators. I said, yeah, it builds character.
There you go, see?
Hey, I have to recluse myself from that. From the character issue. Anyway, guys, thank you for a wonderful discussion. I love talking to you both. I hope David rejoins us next week, and he's okay. He was off to Cleveland, and Al Blumpkin called earlier and said that he's indisposed. But we'll be back next week, and stay healthy, guys. That's paramount.
Look, always enjoy talking to you guys very much. So I'll talk to you next week. Yep.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Hal Bock. George Case III, Hal Bock the first. Adios, guys.
My pleasure. Good night, everybody.
This has been a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.